This is CounselCast, part of the Legal Talk Network, and I'm your host, Karin Conroy. When you face a complex case outside your expertise, you bring in a co-counsel for next-level results. When you want to engage, expand, and elevate your firm, you bring in a marketing co-counsel. In this podcast, I bring in marketing experts who each answer one big question to help your firm achieve more. Here's today's guest.
Hi, I'm Davina Frederick. I'm a Florida licensed attorney, a law firm growth strategist, and the founder of Wealthy Woman Lawyer. Wealthy Woman Lawyer serves women law firm owners who want to scale their law firm business to and through $1 million in gross annual revenue. Karen, it's nice to meet you.
It's so great to have you. Thank you so much for being here. And you have had really great success with your own podcast. We chatted, I want to say it was maybe a year or so ago on your podcast. And it's got, I love following it because you've got great guests, obviously, because you had me.
I had you. That's right.
But it also really covers a very specific niche. And so I wanted to talk to you about that. And then I will also introduce our big question for today is going to be, what are the top mistakes that women law firm owners make with content marketing? But before that, I wanted to spend a minute just talking about that idea of niche. What I don't know. What do you think is the right pronunciation to start?
I say niching down, but I'm niching, some people say niching. So it does not, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to be grammatically correct today, but that's what I say. We're going to go with it, right?
Okay. Sounds good. We'll say niche. And, I got a lot of kickback when I decided to only work with lawyers from some of my MBA friends about how they thought I was shooting myself in the foot. And so I know personally how that can be perceived incorrectly. But I also have seen so many of my clients be fearful of that and worry about basically just making enough money for that to work. And I feel like I know personally that it's a backwards approach, but tell me what your thoughts are and how that's worked for you.
Well, it's worked out really well for me. I didn't start out with women law firm owners. I started out, I'm an attorney and I have a background in business and marketing. And so when I started this business, I started it under a different name. And it was really about helping small business owners develop strategies in service-based businesses, which is what my background is in, engineering and law firms and the like. And the people most attracted to me were other women law firm owners because I had started my own successful law firm business right out of law school and grown it very successfully. And so they wanted to know how I did that. And so naturally, that's who I was attracting. And I worked with both men and women for a while, law firm owners. But I remembered someone once said to me that if you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one.
Yes.
And I think of cocktail party syndrome. I don't know if you've ever heard of cocktail party syndrome, but that's when you're out someplace and you hear your name. When you hear your name, if you're standing here talking to somebody, you hear your name, you automatically, out of all the sounds that you hear, that catches your attention and you turn and you look and you go, who's talking about me? Who's calling my name? And that is really the principle that I am applying when I'm creating this niche. When I'm saying I'm speaking to women law firm owners, that is going to be a very different, more dialed in approach and conversation. There are going to be these things that I discuss with women law firm owners that I would not discuss with men law firm owners, let's say. And it's not that I hate men. I love men, I've worked with men and I love working with men. But for me,
you're married to one.
I am married to one. I'm the daughter of one,
Yeah.
But for me, it was really about when I started holding in-person group events. Yeah. And I realized the conversations we would be having would be very different if I had men in the room. And so it's always about sort of thinking about who's not so much who's in the room, who's not in the room. Like I want to really call out and dial in on the specific problems of women law firm owners. And women law firm owners, it's different from women lawyers in general. Women lawyers in general who might be working someplace are not going to have the same kind of questions because they're not running a business, at least not a law firm business, right? So that's why I did it. And it's worked out very well because people know that I'm speaking to them.
Right. And it's not, oh, she's saying 20% of things that I can take away.
Yeah.
And then, there's 80% that is more generic, that could be for anyone, or maybe doesn't even apply to me. It's all specifically for the kind of thing I'm doing today and stuff that I can apply to the way I'm building this as a business today and over the next, future of this business.
Right.
I think that's really important because I think people do go into it with this idea of fear, and that if they go too small, that first of all, there are lots of women law firm owners out there, not just women lawyers, but women who are owning law firms. And every time I work with a woman-owned law firm, it's a completely different experience than working with law firms that are owned by men. And they just have a different approach. They have a different approach to business, and they have a different approach with their clients. So everything needs to be set up in a different way. Yes.
And their team. Yeah, definitely.
And they also typically, the core of the firm and their business is different than how a man is approaching the overall experience, what their goals are, what the reason for even having the firm to begin with, why they became a lawyer. It's all different. Women are different creatures than men. So, of course, when you set up a law firm or a business or a combination, it's going to be a different experience than for men. So with that in mind, these women are coming to you and they're seeking you out and they're asking you all these questions because they see you as a success story. And you then start talking to them about some of the mistakes that they're making. And so tell me what some of these, to get to our question, tell me what some of these mistakes are that they're making, especially with their content marketing.
Okay, great. So I wrote a book on the subject of marketing, and it is one in a series. There you go. I got it behind you. You showed, thanks.
Yes.
Thanks for the plug there for My Wealthy Woman Lawyer's Guide to
We'll link to it in the show notes too.
Marketing in the virtual age, right. So I wrote this is one in a series of books. I'll also be writing other books. I have one coming out soon on a different topic, also Wealthy Woman Lawyer's Guide. But as part of that, I break down, I try to demystify marketing, because I find so many business owners have a lot of fear around marketing. A lot of attorneys, women law firm owners have some fear around marketing. They don't like it, especially in this day and age when we see so much on social media. A lot of people are using social media for their marketing. Some would say your strategy is incomplete if you're not including social media. And it requires a little bit more visibility. So you're having to do what you and I are doing, which is having conversations publicly so other people can hear them and listen in, or put your face out there and become more visible on video or that kind of thing. And it can feel very intimidating to a lot of people, especially older women like myself, who, we didn't grow up with that. That's not what we did for marketing business before. Went to networking events. Yeah. And so, oh my gosh, now I got to think about it. I have to be on video. So I created this little list about what I think some of their mistakes they're making and when they're approaching content marketing. And the first thing is the need to over prepare. Is they often feel a need to over prepare. As attorneys, it is those details. The details in our work really matter. They're very important. People's livelihoods and lives, in some cases, are on the line. So as an attorney, the details are really important. So we are trained, our brains are trained that way to be very detail oriented. So now it comes time for us to prepare our social media, and we're going out and we're writing whole papers before we go give a little live webinar. We have to feel like if anybody asks us any question that we automatically have the answer to, and we can't stumble, we can't be wrong, we can't do something that's like awkward, we feel like it has to be perfect. That's that perfection syndrome. And so the first mistake I see people see them make is really over preparing, spending too much time and it
reduces the authenticity of it. I feel like what people really want to see is the realness of it, and see the behind the scenes, and see where you are also struggling and at least challenged by whatever this topic is that you're talking about. And the more you talk and the more you kind of are there and present, whether you are dotting every I and crossing every T, you're there and you're top of mind. And when you are too perfect, it's suspect. You know, it's like when you read and you come across an Amazon product and it has 5 million 5-star reviews. It's like, there wasn't ever one person that didn't like it. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Even in this book that I wrote, it's super, like I'm a trained editor and writer. And even in this book, it was like, it's very vulnerable to write a book and put it out there. And when I first thing happened, when I got it, it had all gone to proofing, gone to press, whatever. I got it, opened it. Somebody had made a change. There was a typo right there in the table of contents. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm freaking and I start going through it, looking for all the typos. And that's the kind of thing we get into our head about is like, it's really not. Like, what's important is the message, and the people that the message is meant for will see that, and they'll realize, you know, in the big scheme of things, this is not that big of a deal, right?
Right.
So that's
step one. Take a deep breath and just get out there and be a little imperfect, because that's what people want to see, that you're a human, and, you know, not so much that you're kind of stumbling and making a giant disaster, but just a little imperfect. Yeah.
It's okay if you goof up and you mess up. It's all right. It'll be fine. And
it's kind of endearing.
That's what I'm hoping, at least. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm hoping. All right. So the second thing, and I wrote these down just so that I wouldn't forget the order I had them in, was to try to do everything themselves instead of hire experts.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
This is my favorite one.
Yes. Listen, the amount of content, let me just say that it can feel intimidating when you're on social media. Instagram is particularly triggering to me because of comparisonitis. You know, you're triggering and you're seeing all these great things and you're going, oh my God, I need to get up and I need to start hustling because all these people are ahead of me on the hustle. And if you're looking for Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, whatever, there simply aren't enough hours in the day to do it all. And you're not supposed to, because you really need to be looking as a business owner at the highest and best use of your time. The highest and best use of your time is not coming up with a caption for your Instagram or scheduling posts on your Instagram or, you know, editing your video. Oh my gosh, if I ever have to edit a video, it's really not talking about imperfection. Like there's certain things that they would never get done if they were left to me to do them, because they're not my wheelhouse. I don't like them. Yep. So surround yourself with people who are there to make you look good. And I'll use the example of my podcast team really quick. My podcast team for the last 3 or 4 years, I mean, we've long been doing it. They have just done a really great job in helping me manage all the details of my podcast. So I literally show up and talk with people, which is my favorite part of it. And then they're doing the other things. They're helping me get good guests booked. They're helping me. They send gifts out to my prospective speakers. They, you know, edit everything. They write show notes, all of that. So if you're sitting there thinking that I'm doing it and you're feeling bad about yourself because you're not able to do what I'm able to do, that's why. It's because it's not me.
Yes.
It's a whole bunch of great people behind me.
And they get you to the idea to the completion point. And Seth Godin, one of my marketing favorite geniuses, he talks a lot about shipping. And by shipping, he means if you had a product that you actually had to get into a box and ship it, which we don't, we are service-based. So shipping just means getting to a point of completion, finishing that project, finishing the case, whatever that point of completion is. But people get stuck right before the idea of shipping. And they think that the idea and drafting the idea and kind of getting it to 80% is done, which it's not. And you have to get to that, whatever is going to get you to that shipping point is what needs to happen. And so I also have people who help me with the podcast. And I knew coming in, because I had done just a fun podcast on the side years ago, and I knew how much work it was. And so I said, if I'm going to do this and on a professional level, I absolutely cannot do it all myself. And so I knew coming in, I needed to have a producer, and that was going to be part of the way that this was going to ship. If I wanted this to happen, I might be excited about it in the first month or two, which actually wasn't even the case, because the first month or two is so much more work when you're like getting all the pieces together to launch. But then, like, the idea is that this brings in more work or more traffic or more of something. And you should not have time to sit and edit your podcast and to book the guests and to produce those show notes. That is not what you are doing this for. You are not doing this so that you can have the fun of editing a podcast.
Yeah, so you can give yourself yet another job when you can already do all the jobs that are on your plate, right?
Right,
No.
exactly.
So that's the thing with marketing, is that surrounding yourself with experts. You're an expert in your field, and you may have, so for me, I'm fortunate. I mean, I have a long career, so I've developed a lot of skills over the course of my career. And there are a lot of things that I'm capable of doing and I can do, but the more of those good things I'm good at that I take on, the less opportunity I have to focus on what I'm great at, what fulfills me, what fills me with joy, right?
Yeah.
So hire people to help you. You want people to hire you as a legal expert instead of going to LegalZoom or getting some other sort of thing. Do respect people in other professions by inviting them in as the experts they are, treating them, because I guarantee you they know a lot of stuff about their field of expertise that you don't know, and you don't need to go get a whole another degree or education on it.
Right. And I feel like it's really a sign of success when you are rising to the level that you are bringing in those experts to raise you up to the next level. So when you're surrounded, like you said, by those experts, they are going to get things done and do things at a level that you wouldn't even do yourself. And then it raises you to that level of expertise and boosts your own expertise, and you just keep rising because of it. So it's yet another sign of that success and building yourself up to be that wealthy law firm owner.
Yeah. If we have time, I'll give you one more.
Yeah, that would be great.
I know we have a short amount of time today, but
sure.
So overestimating how much their content is being seen by others.
Yes, I love this.
It's something that I don't think people really realize that they're doing. That's a mistake. Just because we're seeing our content everywhere and obsessing over it and looking at it all the time doesn't mean that we're getting that many other people's eyes or ears on the content. We're putting things out there. And so repurpose. Use that, get it everywhere. Because 3 months from now, a whole different group of people are going to be engaging with your content. And you want to make sure that they hear those wonderful things that you've done. So you don't have to create content every stinking day of the week to try to get stuff out there. You can create content in bulk and then have it repurposed and rerun and reshared in different platforms in different ways. And
if the content is really good quality to begin with. So I think that's where the first step is to make sure that when you're putting the effort in to create that content, whether it's a blog post or a podcast episode, when you make it really high quality and put the thought into it and realize that, okay, this is something that I want to ideally be evergreen, that we could come back and revisit. I had some blog posts that I wrote on Lawyerist 10 years ago that talk about the basics of marketing and the basics of how you set up a marketing plan that are still valid now because they are almost like textbook articles. Right. And so as long as it's quality stuff, you should be able to come back to it. So you need to start with making sure that you're putting out good stuff.
Right. Absolutely.
And Google cares about that too. And Google knows whether it's quality by how much people visit it. And so, you have to make sure that you're putting that time in, make it really great quality, and then you can come back to it over time. And I have often come back to those articles and updated it and changed it a little bit and, just made it a little more fresh. Yeah. But then it's still at the core, the same basic ideas, and you can continue to make that a core of your message, but also not have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Yeah. When you're working with a team, accumulating those intellectual property assets over time and accumulating them in a way where you can, when you're bringing a new team member on board, you're switching service providers to help you. Being able to just share all that and say, look, that library adds up over time. And now your messages, all your core themes and your messages are in that content, and you can give it to them and go, here, repurpose some of this stuff. I know some of my blogs have been repurposed over and over again by people when I'm onboarding people. I'm like, go to my blogs and, take some of that and create a carousel out of it or something. Yeah. and I don't blog actively anymore because I podcast and we use the transcripts for that, for SEO for my site. But all of that content is still usable, and you don't have to be the one, going back to our last one, you don't have to be the one to repurpose all that either. You don't have to make it perfect.
And on the same note, it's important to go back and make sure that it is some good stuff, because over the years and years that I've been putting content out there's somewhere I look at it, I'm like, that was maybe okay 6 years ago, but we don't really say that or do it that way anymore. So get rid of it. And Google doesn't want to see your blog bulked up with stuff that nobody wants to see either. So make sure you're going through and doing a content audit every, couple years or so, and get rid of the stuff that is, kind of bulking it up unnecessarily.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point to make. I don't hear a lot of people talking about that very often. I love talking about kind of the value of the content and repurposing. It's like a good thing for Earth Day.
Exactly. That's very in right now. Sustainability and all that. We have a problem with the supply chain. All of those things. So we're on trend.
Exactly.
We're on trend.
Exactly. Okay, so let's talk about what you're reading, or the book that you have to recommend.
So, the issue that I have is that I'm always reading, and I'm reading usually 2 or 3 at one time, because I'll have something on Audible, and then I'll have something on Kindle, and then I'll have, you can't see all the bookshelves around me, but I have 3 bookshelves in my office. So I would say I'm going to share with you one of my favorite books, and that is the Dichotomy of Leadership. The Dichotomy of Leadership is by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, and they are the authors of Extreme Ownership, which is a popular book you may have heard of. That was their first book, and it's like as big as a phone book. That thing it's a real tome. It's a real read. And I like Extreme Ownership, but I was introduced to the two of them by their second book, which is The Dichotomy of Leadership. So the concept of Extreme Ownership is that these 2 guys who wrote this are former Navy SEALs. And what they do now is they have a business consulting company, and they help corporations improve their leadership. Okay. And so what they've done is they wrote the book Extreme Ownership, and it's about applying the principles of the Navy SEALs to business in terms of leadership. And they say there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. And it's really about you taking ownership of, you are 100% accountable and responsible for your team and the outcome that you achieve with your team. So if you're not getting the outcome you desire, there's an issue with you as a leader, not necessarily with your team. And it may be your team, and there may be somebody on your team you need to let go. But if you haven't let them go yet, that's your issue as a leader. Yeah. So that's what I love about Extreme Ownership and the Dichotomy of Leadership. I think what happened is so many people read the book and took it to extreme. And so they took,
well, it's in the title.
I'm responsible for everything. Oh my God, and there's a lot of, whipping themselves and whatever. So I think they had to come out with something. You got to like, well, okay, let me balance this a little bit.
Soften it up a little.
Let's not like beat ourselves over the head, if we're not perfect. And so they wrote this, and so they talk about the balance. So they take their principles that they talked about in Extreme Ownership, and then they talk about the flip side, and sort of there's a balance to it, right?
I like that.
I just love, and they've had other at least another book since then. I think maybe a couple, but I just really like it. They tell the story from their perspective. They'll give you examples of their time in country, in the military, and the action, something that actually happened where the principal, they use that as an example of the principle, and then they tell you the principle, and then they give you an example as applied to business through some of their clients. And so it's just really a good read. Yeah, it's a really good read.
I love hearing the stories like that. I mean, it's like anytime you're reading good stuff, there's always some good stories behind it. I love Malcolm Gladwell for business just because he's such a great storyteller, and it makes it so much more memorable when you can visualize the concept in the terms of that story. And then I can repeat his stories all day long.
Yeah.
So that sounds excellent. I like the idea of the balanced version too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I came into it, was the dichotomy of leadership, because I looked at extreme ownership and I'm like, okay, this is going to be war and peace. And I'm not sure I have the time to commit to it. So I went in that, and I really love that. It's a little shorter, but I really love that. And then I did go back and read Extreme Ownership, because I was compelled after reading it to go, okay, let me go back
To get more.
and
Yeah.
dig into that. Yeah. So it was really great.
That sounds excellent. I think that ties in perfectly with this idea of especially women law firm owners and kind of finding their place in, some of these mistakes they might be making, and then also just in developing their own firm and figuring all these things out, but also realizing how to address their clients' needs in the right way with their team and making sure their team is all in the right place and all of that.
It's a big challenge. The team piece of it, when you're scaling your law firm business, the team piece of it is a core challenge, because
it continues to be like it never really goes away. You find just the right thing, and then all of a sudden somebody has a life change. So then you have to like make other changes. But it's just dealing with humans. That's just kind of how things go, I think.
Well, I think it's important to understand the difference to it in leadership versus management, and what your role is. And so if you have a small law firm and you haven't yet layered some hierarchy in it, you may be both. You may be the leader and the manager. But as your firm grows, you get bigger and bigger and bigger, you're going to then need to cultivate leaders on different levels. And some of those may be managers. Managers are more the day-to-day operations, making sure things get done. And leadership is really about being inspirational and creating that vision, holding that vision, inspiring people to galvanize around that vision. And so that's where we do a lot of work with my clients in really rising up as leaders, because they're already natural leaders, but just putting a little fuel to that fire and giving them a lot of clarity around it.
Yeah, it's hard to not jump down in and just get involved and get things done when you see something that needs to be done too. I mean, I have the same problem myself, where it's like, oh, I could just do that in 5 seconds. And it's never 5 seconds. And in those 15 minutes that I thought it was going to be 5 seconds, I could have done some other significant thing that also didn't disempower the person who was working for me. So it's hard. It's always hard.
It is. What got you here, what I say is that as high achieving women, what got us here is not what it's going to get us to the next level.
Yes,
because as high
that's so
achieving
important.
women, we got here of our own willpower and our own late night studying and taking tests and applying for the business license. We did all these things that got ourselves here. But if we want to next level our business, and really that point where you're scaling it from, $500,000 to $1 million and beyond to 2 million, 5 million, is where you're really having to layer in and rely on, and you're not going to know. You can have all the control of all the details, or you can have growth, but you cannot have both. Right.
Yeah. And it's a different business model. Once you get past that, one man show versus the whole team and a company, that's a completely different business model. And you have to figure out how to, clone yourself and figure out how to get all those people in the right place so that you aren't doing every little step. And that is, it's a lot. There's a lot involved in that. So,
and we're not, none of us are born out of the womb knowing how to do anything.
Right.
So it's a skill at like any other skill that you can learn is what I.
Right. And surrounding yourself with the women who have gone through that, finding those success stories and connecting with all of that is really the way to do it in how long our lifetime is. We have to, if we had like 5 lifetimes, we could probably try to figure it all out on our own. I don't know why you would want to when you can go and connect all of, to all of the communities out there and all the resources. And that's the way you do it in a single lifetime, is to really expedite your own process and your own success by finding and gathering all of the details and the resources and community that are out there. like your book and your podcast and everything that you're putting out there.
Great. Thank you.
Well, Davina, thank you so much for being here. Davina Frederick is the founder and CEO of Wealthy Women Lawyer. It's a great podcast. I highly recommend it. And we will also link to her current book and the future book in the show notes. Thank you again for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Karen. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the CounselCast podcast. Be sure to visit our website at counsel-cast.com for the resources mentioned on the episode and to give us your feedback. If you enjoyed this episode, I would appreciate if you could rate and review the podcast on Apple and subscribe to your favorite podcast platform. See you on the next one.